Have you ever felt that there is something far beyond the reality they teach us? That everything we see is just a shell, and behind it, an invisible, vibrant, and intelligent system pulses? Helena Blavatsky knew this, and she dedicated her life to revealing what few dared to even imagine. We are not talking about religion, nor about superficial spirituality. We are talking about hidden reality, about the invisible code that sustains what you call the world. In this video, you will understand why most people live sleeping while wide awake. And more importantly, you will discover what Blavatsky tried to show us to tear this veil. This is not a theory. It is a direct shock to your perception, which, if you have the courage to face it until the end, can provoke something irreversible, the expansion of your consciousness. But be warned, after hearing this, there's no going back. The invisible sleep of humanity. Stop for a moment, for a yai. Look around you. What do you see? Walls? A screen? Maybe the street outside? You hear the familiar sounds of your day. Traffic, distant conversations, the notification from your cell phone. You feel the weight of your body in the chair, the air entering and leaving your lungs. You feel awake, don't you? Wake. After all, your eyes are open. Your mind is processing information. You are functional, productive, integrated into society. But what if I told you that this state you call being awake is, in fact, one of the most profound and sophisticated forms of sleep that exist? A sleep with open eyes, a collective trance in which humanity has been immersed for centuries. Think about your routine. Wake up, work, pay bills, consume entertainment, sleep, repeat. The weekends are a brief pause, a programmed escape valve so that the pressure does not become unbearable, so that you return on Monday and continue turning the wheel. Your worries, your desires, your ambitions, or where do they come from? Are they genuinely yours, or were they subtly implanted in your mind from the moment you were born? The ambition to have a better car, a bigger house, the latest smartphone. The fear of not being accepted, of being left behind, of not meeting expectations. The need for validation through likes and followers. The political indignation that consumes you, always directed at a carefully fabricated external enemy, while the true structures of power remain untouched, laughing in the shadows. This is not life. It's a script, a program running in the background of your consciousness. You think you are making choices, but you are just selecting pre-approved options from a limited menu. True freedom, the option to leave the menu, is not even presented. And why does almost no one notice this? Because sleep is comfortable. The prison cell is cozy when the walls are invisible and the food is served on time. Questioning the nature of your reality is terrifying. It is easier to believe that the world is exactly what it seems to be. It is easier to focus on immediate dramas, on the small victories and defeats of daily life, than to lift your head and face the frightening vastness of what truly exists. The system does not need armed guards to keep you in line. It just needs to keep your attention occupied. And it is a master at this. 24-hour news, an infinite stream of irrelevant content on social media, the next must-see series, the next unmissable promotion. It is a constant anesthesia for the soul, a white noise that drowns out that little inner voice that whispers, "There is something more. This can't be all." Helena Blavatsky called this state psychic somnambulism. She saw an entire humanity walking towards the abyss, completely hypnotized by the shadows projected on the cave wall, convinced that those shadows were the only reality. Waking up is not opening your eyes in the morning. It is recognizing the programming. It is realizing that your mind is not yours, that it has been colonized, occupied by ideas, beliefs, and fears that do not belong to you. The first step to freedom is not to take a step forward, but to stop running, to stop consuming, to stop reacting, and in the silence that follows, to ask for the first time with total sincerity, who is in control here? What is real? And who am I behind all these masks I was taught to wear? This question, if asked with the right intensity, is the first crack in the wall of your prison. It is the beginning of the true awakening. The veil that no one questions. Now that you have begun to glimpse the possibility of being asleep, we need to talk about the mechanism that keeps you in this state. It is not a conspiracy of men in dark rooms, although that may also exist at denser levels. It is something much more subtle, older, and infinitely more powerful. It is a force that operates in silence, woven into the very fabric of your perception. Blavatsky, reviving a millennial-old term from Eastern traditions, called this force Maya. The word is often translated as illusion, but this translation is dangerously incomplete. Maya is not just a lie. It is a partial truth presented as the whole truth. It is a veil, a magnificent, enchanted veil that covers the face of reality. The function of Maya is not to prevent you from discovering the truth. That would be too crude, too ineffective. The function of Maya is much more ingenious. It makes you never wish to seek the truth. It makes the world of appearances so fascinating, so engaging, so full of dramas and rewards that the idea of looking at what is behind the veil seems uninteresting, irrelevant, or even insane. Think about how Maya operates in your life. It is the force that tells you that your happiness depends on external factors. A relationship, a job, social recognition, material wealth. It convinces you that you are a separate being, in competition with other separate beings for limited resources. It feeds your ego, making it believe that your opinions are of vital importance, that your sufferings are unique, and that your identity is summed up by your name, your profession, your nationality, your personal history. Maya is the great weaver of dualities. Good and evil, success and failure, sacred and profane, us and them. These categories do not exist in ultimate reality, but they are the bars of the cage in which your mind lives. You spend your entire life fighting for one side and against the other, without realizing that both sides are just two faces of the same illusory coin, designed to keep you engaged in the game. The material world that you perceive with your five senses is Maya's masterpiece. It is so vivid, so solid, so consistent, that questioning it seems like madness. But Blavatsky teaches us that this dense world is only the lowest and coarsest of multiple planes of existence. It is the sediment, the residue, and we have been conditioned to believe that the sediment is all that exists. It's like a diver who spends his entire life in the dark bottom of the ocean and forgets that there is a surface, sunlight, and a vast sky above. The veil of Maya is not imposed from the outside. We weave it every day, with every reactive thought, every judgment, every attachment, every fear. We collaborate with our own imprisonment, and that is why it is so difficult to escape. No one is holding you except yourself. Society, culture, education, the media, all are agents of Maya. They reinforce the veil at every moment, celebrating those who play the game of illusion well and marginalizing or ridiculing those who dare to point to the veil and say, "This is not real." And that is exactly what Blavatsky did. She not only pointed to the veil, she tried to tear it. She gave us a map, not to navigate better within the illusion, but to find the exit. She showed us that the veil, however powerful it may seem, is only smoke and mirrors to a consciousness that has decided to awaken. The power of Maya lies in your unconsciousness of it. The moment you recognize it, the moment you name it, it begins to lose its power over you. You start to see the strings, to notice the tricks. You still live in the world, but you are no longer of the world. You become an observer of the great game instead of a desperate pawn. And this change in perspective is the beginning of everything. What Blavatsky saw and no one told you. To understand the magnitude of what Helena Petrovna Blavatsky did, you need to transport yourself to the late 19th century. It was a time of extremes. On one hand, a triumphant scientific materialism, which declared that anything that could not be weighed, measured, and dissected simply did not exist. Consciousness was a mere byproduct of chemical reactions in the brain. The universe was a great, cold, and purposeless machine. On the other hand, a dogmatic and institutionalized religion, which demanded blind faith in literal doctrines and offered a simplistic heaven and hell as the only alternatives. In this polarized scenario, Blavatsky emerged as an anomaly, a force of nature that did not fit into any of the boxes. She was accused by both sides. Scientists called her a charlatan. The religious called her a heretic, an agent of the devil. And why? Because what she brought was so radical, so profound, that it threatened the foundations of both worldviews. She was ridiculed, slandered, fought, and deeply misunderstood. Her personal life was scoured for scandals. Her motivations were questioned, and her writings were deliberately distorted. The narrative created around her was that of an eccentric, perhaps fraudulent medium who channeled messages from mysterious masters. This is the caricature that has survived in popular culture. But the truth is much more overwhelming. The truth is that Blavatsky was not channeling anything in the popular sense of the term. She was a scholar of monumental caliber, a tireless researcher, and above all, an initiate. She spent decades traveling through regions of the world that were practically inaccessible to Westerners at the time. Tibet, India, Egypt, the Caucasus. She did not go as a tourist. She went in search of the source. She was accepted into closed esoteric circles, into secret fraternities that had preserved, for millennia, what she called the secret doctrine, the ancient wisdom, the single root from which all the world's religions and philosophies had sprung and then become corrupted. What did she see? She saw the history of the cosmos and of humanity from a perspective that completely annihilates the conventional narrative. She saw that the universe is not a random creation, but the periodic emanation of a single, absolute, unthinkable principle. She saw that evolution is not just physical, as Darwin proposed, but a dual process, spiritual and material, guided by vast hierarchies of conscious intelligences. She saw that humanity is immeasurably older than science supposes, having gone through cycles of grandiose civilizations and devastating cataclysms, the so-called root races. She saw that figures like Buddha, Jesus, Krishna, Zoroaster were not gods or founders of competing religions, but emissaries of the same universal white lodge, adapting the same eternal truth for different cultures and eras. And most importantly, she translated this knowledge. She took metaphysical concepts of staggering complexity, sealed in symbolic languages like Sanskrit, Senzar, Chaldean, and poured them into the West, into a language that the modern mind, even with difficulty, could begin to decipher. Works like Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine are not books. They are portals. They are time bombs planted in the heart of Western consciousness, programmed to detonate slowly over the decades as humanity becomes more receptive. What no one told you is that Blavatsky was not founding a new religion. She was trying to restore the science of spirituality. She was handing us the instruction manual for the universe and the human being, a manual that had been hidden, fragmented, and purposefully forgotten. She knew she would be attacked. She knew she would be misunderstood. But she also knew that the seed she planted would germinate. And maybe, just maybe, you who are listening to this now are one of those sprouts, finally ready to grow towards the light of the truth she revealed. The real structure of reality. Prepare yourself, because now we are going to dive deep. What I am about to tell you goes against everything your senses and your education have told you. If you think the chair you are sitting on is solid, that the world around you is made of fixed and stable matter, you are living on the shallowest surface of existence. Blavatsky, and the perennial wisdom she transmitted, teaches us that there is no such thing as matter as we understand it. What we call solid matter is, in fact, energy in a state of extremely slow and dense vibration. Everything, absolutely everything, from the most distant star to the fleeting thought in your mind, is vibration. The universe is a cosmic symphony, and the physical world is just the lowest, deepest note, so low that it seems silent and motionless. This is not romantic esotericism or New Age poetry. It is spiritual mechanics. Modern science, with quantum physics, has begun to scratch the surface of this truth. They have discovered that at the subatomic level, particles are not little billiard balls, but rather clouds of probability, patterns of energy that behave as both a wave and a particle. They have discovered that the observer affects the observed. that consciousness is intrinsically linked to the manifestation of reality. They are, unknowingly, rediscovering the principles that Blavatsky articulated over a century ago. Reality, according to the secret doctrine, is structured in 7 planes or lokas, 7 levels of vibrational density, interpenetrating each other. The physical world we perceive is only one of these 7 planes. Above and within it, there are more subtle planes: the etheric plane, the astral plane, or kama, the mental plane, manas, and so on, rising in frequency and subtlety until reaching the purely spiritual planes. Buddhic, atmic. Think of it like radio frequencies. Right now, the space around you is filled with hundreds of radio, TV, Wi-Fi, and cell phone signals. You don't see them, you don't hear them, you don't feel them. To you, they don't exist. But just turn on a device tuned to the correct frequency for that signal to become a perceptible reality, like music or an image. In the same way, the other planes of existence are here and now, interpenetrating ours. Beings live and operate on these planes. Laws govern these planes. And the most shocking thing, you, right now, exist simultaneously on all of them. You are not just on the physical plane. You have a body and a consciousness that correspond to each of these levels. Do you see the prison? The prison is not the physical world. The prison is your consciousness being tuned and locked into only a single frequency, the lowest and most limited frequency of all. You live in a 7-story palace, Uri, but you believe your entire house is the dark, damp basement. All your focus, all your identity, all your sense of reality is invested in this tiny fragment of total existence. That is why life seems so limited, so full of suffering, and so devoid of meaning. We are trying to find infinite answers in a finite room. We are trying to quench a spiritual thirst with material salt water. Blavatsky did not ask us to believe this. She gave us the key to start tuning into the other frequencies: meditation, mental discipline, purification of emotions, study. These are not religious practices. They are consciousness engineering techniques. They are the process of calibrating your internal radio to begin perceiving the more subtle realities that have always been there, waiting to be discovered. The solidity of the world is the greatest of all hypnoses. To break this hypnosis is to understand that you are not in the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself through a temporarily dense focal point. And when this perception settles, not as an intellectual concept, but as a lived truth, the fear of death dissolves, anxiety loses its power, and true freedom begins to dawn on the horizon of your consciousness, the 7 bodies, and your true identity. If reality is multidimensional, then so are you. This is perhaps one of the most liberating and, at the same time, most disorienting revelations of Blavatsky's teachings. The question, "Who am I?" gains a complexity that the common mind can barely conceive. Let's start by deconstructing the biggest mistake of all. You are not a body. You do not have a soul. The truth is the inverse. You are a spiritual monad, a spark of the absolute that has, or more precisely, uses a series of vehicles or bodies to be able to experience and act on the different planes of reality. You are a multi-dimensional structure, like a Russian doll. Your biggest mistake was to believe that your identity resides in the outermost and most perishable shell of this structure. Blavatsky, following esoteric tradition, describes the 7-fold constitution of the human being. Let's unfold this, not as a list to be memorized, but as a map of your own totality. The first body, the densest, is the physical body, sthula sharira. It is the vehicle you use to interact with the physical plane. It is a biochemical marvel, but it is temporary. It is a suit, an instrument. To identify with it is like an astronaut believing he is his spacesuit. The second, interpenetrating the physical, is the etheric body or etheric double, linga sharira. It is the energetic mold, the vital matrix that sustains the physical body. It is the carrier of prana, the life energy. It is through it that health or disease manifests in the dense body. The third is the astral body, or body of desires, kamarupa. This is the vehicle of your emotions, passions, desires, and impulses. It is a whirlwind of energies. Most of humanity lives centered in this body, being dragged from one side to the other by their reactive emotions, like a boat without a rudder in a storm. It is the battlefield where the ego fights for its supremacy. The fourth is the lower mind or intellect, kamamanas. This is the rational, analytical mind that processes data from the senses and formulates concrete thoughts. It is a powerful tool, but when not connected to the higher principles, it becomes the cunning servant of the desire body, using logic to justify irrational and selfish impulses. Most people believe that their identity ends here, in the combination of their body, their emotions, and their thoughts. Blavatsky calls this combination the personality, or the lower self. It is the mask we wear in this life, the sum of our programming. It is mortal and disintegrates after the death of the physical body. But the real journey begins beyond that. The fifth principle is the higher mind, or the human soul, higher manas. This is the true I thinker, the individualized and reincarnating ego. It is the repository of all the experiences and wisdom gathered over countless lives. It is the bridge between the mortal personality and the immortal spirit. The sixth is the spiritual vehicle, buddhi. It is not a body in the same sense, but a principle. It is the faculty of intuition, of spiritual discernment, of compassion and unconditional love. It is the voice of conscience, the ability to know the truth directly, without the intermediary of reasoning. The seventh and highest is the spirit, Atma. It is the pure spark of the Absolute, the ray of universal consciousness that is our innermost core. It is identical for all beings. It is the God within, the silent observer. Do you understand now? Your identity is not in what can be named, weighed, or measured. Your true identity is the immortal triad, Atma Buddhi Manas, the spirit, its intuitive vehicle, and the reincarnating higher mind. Everything else, your personality, your thoughts, your emotions, your body, are just temporary tools, costumes for the theatrical play of a single incarnation. Your biggest mistake was to confuse the actor with the role he is playing. This limits you more than you can imagine. Because as long as you identify with the personality, you will be subject to the fear of death, to attachment, to the pain of loss. But when you begin to shift your identity to the immortal actor, to the higher self, everything changes. Life on earth becomes what it really is, a school, a gymnasium, a learning opportunity for the soul. And death becomes just a transition, the moment when the actor takes off his costume and returns to the dressing room to rest before the next scene. The invisible hierarchies are watching you. This topic may be the most challenging for the modern, skeptical, and materialistic mind. This is where many draw the line and say, this is fantasy. But if you have come this far, it is because a part of you suspects that reality is much stranger and more magnificent than we have been allowed to believe. Blavatsky did not only speak of planes of existence and subtle bodies, she spoke of inhabitants, conscious beings, older than the earth itself, who operate on planes that escape common perception. No, we are not talking about angels with wings and harps, or demons with horns and tridents. These are childish personifications, distortions of a much more complex and sublime truth. We are talking about hierarchies of intelligences, or dhyan chohans, as they are called in Eastern texts. They are the architects, the builders, and the guardians of the cosmos. They are the living and conscious forces behind what we call the laws of nature. Gravity, electromagnetism, the evolution of species, are not mechanical and blind processes. They are the manifestation of the will and intelligence of these vast consciousnesses. The universe is not a clock assembled by an absent watchmaker. It is a living, pulsating organism, and these hierarchies are its organs, its nervous systems, its regulatory agents. They operate on a scale of time and consciousness that makes human existence a mere blink of an eye. Some of these hierarchies were involved in the very formation of our solar system and our planet. Others guided the development of life and consciousness on Earth, overseeing the great evolutionary cycles, the root races, and the slow journey of the human monad through the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms until it reached self-consciousness. Blavatsky left clues about these beings in her writings. She spoke of the Lipika, the cosmic scribes who record every thought and action in what are called the Akashic records, ensuring that the law of karma, of cause and effect, is fulfilled with mathematical and impersonal precision. She spoke of the Manasaputras, the sons of mind, beings from a previous evolution who, in an act of cosmic sacrifice, awakened the mind in primitive humanity, endowing it with the spark of self-consciousness and the freedom of choice. These are not metaphors. They are subtle facts that your Western mind, trained to reject everything that cannot be placed under a microscope, rejects by default. But think about it. You accept that there are life forms you cannot see, like bacteria and viruses, because science has given you the tool, the microscope, to prove their existence. What if there were tools to perceive these other forms of intelligence? What if developed intuition, trained clairvoyance, deep meditation were the microscopes of the soul that allow the perception of these planes and their inhabitants? Blavatsky and other initiates throughout history developed these inner senses. They saw, and they reported what they saw. They tell us that we are not alone and never have been. Human evolution is not an accident, but a project, a supervised project. This does not mean we are puppets. The gift of mind has given us free will. We can choose to align our will with the cosmic plan or act against it, generating disharmony and suffering for ourselves. These hierarchies observe us, not with a judgmental gaze, like an anthropomorphic god, but with the interest of a gardener tending to his plants. They offer inspiration, protection, and guidance, but they cannot directly interfere with our karma or our choices. Their help is subtle, coming through intuition, dreams, meaningful coincidences. They work through human beings who have purified and prepared themselves to act as channels for higher energy and wisdom. These are the true initiates, the masters of wisdom, whom Blavatsky served. Understanding this changes everything. It removes the feeling of loneliness and randomness from the universe. It inserts your small life into a cosmic context of purpose and meaning. You are not an orphan in a cold universe. You are a student in a vast cosmic school, surrounded by invisible teachers who yearn for your success. Why you haven't woken up yet? You have come this far. You have heard about the collective sleep, the veil of Maya, the vibrational structure of reality, your multiple bodies, and the invisible hierarchies. Your intellectual mind may be fascinated, perhaps even agreeing with many of these points. You may have read dozens of books on spirituality. You may have watched hundreds of videos like this one. Maybe you meditate, do yoga, use crystals, study astrology. You consume spiritual content. But be honest with yourself. Has anything fundamentally changed in your life? Or are you still stuck in the same patterns of reaction, the same fears, the same anxieties, just with a new veneer of esoteric jargon? You are still trapped. Why? The answer is crucial and can be painful, because waking up is not about accumulating knowledge. It's about rupture. You can fill your mind with the most sublime concepts. You can memorize the 7 planes and the 7 bodies. You can discourse on karma and reincarnation. But if this knowledge remains at the level of the intellect, it is useless. Worse, it can become an even more sophisticated trap of the ego. The spiritual ego. The ego that prides itself on knowing more than others, that judges the asleep, that uses knowledge as a way to feel special and separate. This is the most dangerous dead end on the path. You haven't woken up because you are still trying to add awakening to your current life. You want enlightenment, but without giving up your comfortable attachments. You want inner peace, but without facing the darkness that exists within you. You want freedom, but you are afraid to let go of the chains that, despite everything, give you a sense of security. True awakening is not additive, it is subtractive. It is not about gaining something new, it is about losing everything that is not real. Losing your limiting beliefs, losing your false identities, losing your fears, losing the need for control, losing the person you think you are. And that is terrifying. It is a death, the death of the ego. And the ego will fight with all its might to survive. It will use spiritual knowledge itself as its weapon. It will convince you to think about awakening instead of living the awakening. It will keep you busy analyzing, comparing, theorizing, so that you never have to take the leap into the abyss. Blavatsky revealed exactly where the turning point is. It is not in the books, nor in the workshops, nor in the gurus. It is in the practical and relentless application of spiritual will over the lower nature. It is in transmutation. It is taking the raw energy of your emotions, anger, fear, desire, and instead of repressing or venting it, alchemically transmuting it into courage, compassion, and spiritual aspiration. It is observing your thoughts without identifying with them until the mind quiets down and silence reveals the voice of intuition. It is practicing non-attachment not as an indifferent coldness, but as a supreme act of love, freeing yourself and others from the prison of expectations. Awakening is a crisis, a dark night of the soul where the old world collapses and the new has not yet been born. It is a moment of total disorientation, where you no longer know who you are or what to believe. Most people flee from this crisis. They return to distractions, to the comfort of sleep, but the genuine seeker remains. They pass through the fire. They allow everything that is false to be burned away. And it is on the other side of this purifying fire that the true self, the higher self, is reborn from the ashes. So, ask yourself, are you accumulating knowledge or are you shedding illusions? Are you decorating the map or are you walking the territory? Because as long as you are not willing to sacrifice who you think you are, you will never discover who you really are. The hidden code in ancient texts. One of the biggest illusions sold to us is that truth is something new, something to be discovered by scientists in labs or by modern prophets. The reality, as Blavatsky exhaustively demonstrated, is that the truth has never been absent. It has always been here, available, just not in clear and direct language. It has been veiled, protected, coded. Why? For two main reasons. First, to protect the knowledge from being profaned and misused by those with selfish intentions. Spiritual knowledge is power, and power in the hands of an unpurified mind is destructive. Second, to protect the unprepared seeker. Certain truths, if revealed prematurely, can be psychologically devastating, leading to madness or despair. Knowledge needs to be unveiled in stages as the individual's consciousness expands to be able to integrate it safely. And where is this code? Everywhere. It is hidden in plain sight. The secret doctrines, the ancient manuscripts, the myths of all cultures, the religious symbols, the children's fables, the sacred architecture of cathedrals and temples, all speak the same universal and silent language, the language of the symbol. Think of the great myths of humanity, the myth of Prometheus, who steals fire from the gods to give it to men and is punished for it. This is not a literal story. It is an allegory of the descent of the Manasaputras, who stole the fire of self-conscious mind from the higher hierarchies to awaken humanity, taking on a karmic burden in the process. Think of the story of Noah's Ark. It is not about a man putting all the world's animals on a wooden boat. The Ark is the human body, the microcosm. The animals are the germs of life, the lower principles and passions that need to be saved and transported through the flood of matter, of incarnation, to be eventually transmuted and elevated. Think of universal symbols. The cross, long predating Christianity, does not just represent an instrument of torture. It represents the spirit, vertical axis, descending into matter, horizontal axis. It represents the human being itself, with arms outstretched as the meeting point between heaven and earth. The circle with a point in the center, the symbol of the sun, represents the one principle, the point emanating the manifested universe, the circle. The serpent biting its own tail, the Ouroboros, symbolizes eternity. The cycles of manifestation and dissolution, wisdom. Blavatsky gave us a master key to decipher this language. The secret doctrine is, in large part, an exercise in decoding, showing how the Hindu Vedas, the Kabbalistic Zohar, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and Hesiod's Theogony are all telling the same cosmic story using different symbolic dialects. The problem is that the modern mind has lost the ability to think symbolically. We have been trained for literalism. We read an ancient text and dismiss it as primitive or superstitious because we do not understand its depth. We try to analyze a myth with the cold logic of science, killing its soul in the process. Only those with inner eyes see the code. And what are these inner eyes? They are developed intuition, buddhi. It is the ability to go beyond form and perceive the essence, to see the universal in the particular. Intellectual study is the first step. You need to learn the alphabet of symbolism. But true understanding only comes when knowledge unites with inner experience. It's when you read about the battle of Kurukshetra in the Bhagavad Gita and realize that Arjuna and Krishna are not on a battlefield in ancient India. They are inside you. Now, Arjuna is your hesitant human soul, and Krishna is your higher self, your divine spirit, instructing you on how to win the battle against your own lower tendencies, the Kauravas. The truth is veiled, not to frustrate us, but to invite us on a journey of discovery. It is a cosmic puzzle, and with every piece you fit, it is not just the picture that becomes clearer. It is you who become more whole. Real initiation happens in silence. In the modern world of spirituality as spectacle, we have become accustomed to associating awakening with external and dramatic events. Bright lights, visions of angels, out-of-body experiences, elaborate ceremonies with chants and special clothes. We seek the event, the peak experience that will magically transform everything. Blavatsky and the esoteric tradition she represents teaches us the opposite. True initiation, the true breaking of the barriers of consciousness, is not a noisy event. It is an internal, gradual process, and in its climax, profoundly silent. The great initiations of the soul do not happen in stone temples built by human hands, but in the temple of the heart. They are not conferred by an external guru, but won by the tireless effort of the individual to overcome themselves. A master can point the way, but the walk is solitary. True awakening does not come with lights or miracles. It happens in the most absolute silence, when something inside you breaks. It is a click, a sudden and irreversible shift in perception. It is a moment of gnosis, of direct and undeniable knowledge that transcends all faith and all belief. Think about it. You can spend years fighting a behavioral pattern like anger. You can read about it, analyze it, try to control it. And then, one day, in the midst of a situation that would normally make you explode, something happens. In an instant of inner silence, you see the mechanism of anger. You see it as an impersonal energy, not as your anger. And in that moment of clear vision, its power over you breaks, not because you suppressed it, but because you understood it on a level that is beyond words. This is a small initiation. Now amplify this to the fundamental questions of existence. The perception of the unreality of the ego, the perception of the unity of all life, the perception of the immortal nature of your true being. These realizations are not logical conclusions. They are ruptures in the fabric of perception. Blavatsky spoke of this break with a precision that few understood. She described how consciousness, upon reaching a certain point of tension through aspiration and discipline, can jump from one plane to another. It is like water that, when heated, reaches 100 degrees and suddenly turns into steam. It is not a gradual process at that point. It is a quantum state change. The preparatory work is slow and arduous. It is the daily practice of self-observation, of the purification of motives, of selfless service. It is the heating of the water. But the transformation itself is instantaneous, and it happens in silence of deep meditation, in the silence of a moment of crisis, when the ego is exhausted and gives up, in the silence of an act of pure compassion, where the I disappears. That is why the spiritual path is, in essence, a journey inward into silence. The external world is noisy, full of distractions that keep the mind on the surface. The truth resides in stillness. It is in silence that the subtle voice of the soul, Buddhi, can be heard. It is in silence that the walls between the lower self and the higher self begin to dissolve. True initiation gives you nothing you do not already possess. It simply removes the veils that prevent you from seeing what you have always been. A divine, eternal being, one with the all. Now you will understand. The search for external signs is a distraction. The real magic happens when the whole world falls silent, and you, for the first time, listen to yourself. If you understand this, your consciousness will expand. We have reached the end of this journey, but it is, in fact, a beginning. Your beginning. If you have listened carefully until now, not as a mere consumer of information, but with an open mind and a questioning heart, something has already begun to move within you. A seed has been activated. This is no longer another esoteric video to add to your collection of knowledge. It is a mirror. Every topic, every concept, every challenge was designed to reflect not just Blavatsky's ideas, but to reflect you back to yourself. Where did you see yourself in the sleep of humanity? Which veil of Maya is strongest in your life? Which of your 7 bodies do you feed the most, and with which one do you identify? Did you scoff at the idea of invisible hierarchies, or did you feel a chill of recognition? Did you see yourself in the accumulator of knowledge who has not yet awakened? The final truth, the great secret that Blavatsky and all the sages tried to transmit to us, is devastatingly simple. The key and the lock are within you. The prison and the freedom are within you. The entire universe, with all its planes, mysteries, and beings, is contained within your own consciousness. There is nothing to be sought out there. The journey is not horizontal, through space and time, but vertical, through the layers of your own existence. Expanding consciousness is not a mystical and vague process. It is the concrete act of moving your center of identity from the personal and mortal ego to the impersonal and immortal self. It is to stop seeing yourself as a separate and fragile wave, and to start feeling like the entire ocean. How is this done? There is no magic 5-step formula, but the path has been pointed out. It begins with sacred doubt, doubting the reality that has been imposed upon you. It continues with relentless self-observation, observing your thoughts, emotions, and reactions without judgment, like a scientist observing an experiment. It proceeds with transmutation, the alchemical work of transforming your weaknesses into strengths, and it culminates in silence, the practice of quieting the mind so that reality can reveal itself. Now it's up to you. The information has been delivered. The map has been unfolded. You can turn this off now and go back to comfortable sleep, allowing the noise of the world to drown out this voice that has just been awakened. Or you can accept the call. You can start today to question, to observe, to work on yourself. You can take a single concept that resonated with you and apply it in your life. The decision is yours, and in it lies all your power. This is no longer just a video. It's a mirror, an inner call. If you have truly understood the essence of what has been said so far, not just with your mind, but with a deep feeling in your being, then something in you has already changed forever. The crack in the wall of your perception has been created. Now, you can ignore it and let it close, or you can have the courage to force it open, to look through it, and to finally walk towards the dazzling light of your own true nature. Blavatsky tried to warn, and maybe now, finally, a century and a half later, someone is truly listening.